Hi, I just want to share this section of this video to make a particular point. I'll leave you the link to it. It's an excellent video. I do suggest you watch the whole of this video because the information that's shared here is important, and I also need to issue an apology to aplaintruth.info who's uploaded this and many excellent videos, which I'll leave you the link to this under this video. Because I referred to him as a her in a video that I made about the California fires. I'm sorry I was getting him mixed up with the Truth by Grace, who also does excellent videos, and they have supported each other a bit, shared clips of each other's videos, and that was why I was getting them both. I totally got him mixed up, so I'm really sorry to call you a she instead of a he, but you know, thank you for your excellent videos, and also Truth by Grace. So to get to the point now, what is being talked about here are the so-called Pike, so-called prophecies, which actually, you know, he said how World War I should start and what they'd have to do for World War II and then the Third World War, you see, and actually everything that was said, he was right, okay. And don't forget, communism as an ideology originated in France during the revolution, which it did, and communism wasn't an ideology. Communism was how people live communally, in communities, okay, and in those communities they operate on both the capitalist and socialist principles. They're capitalising and they're operating in a social way. There's barter involved, people doing odd jobs for each other, people if they can't get a job to earn a wage, they can fall back on their common lands and their forest charter rights, okay, to go and gather wood and fuel and things from the forest, or to hunt hare and fish and all these kind of things, because that's their common law right, gives them right to survive on the lands that they were born in and to thrive on them, to have homes, to have fuel, to have food, to be able to do all these things. But we're living in a world where we've been denied our rights to do these things. We're made totally dependent on a financial system that then refuses, even now, to provide welfare for people when it can't provide employment. It refuses to provide homes for people that haven't got paid employment. So a system that refuses to provide jobs to people and then denies their rights to even to live self-sustainably, has robbed them of that right, has robbed them of all the skills that they had to live self-sufficiently, and has made it impossible for people to be able to eat even, or have a home, or healthcare, or anything at all, even legal rights, if they've got no money. So people are effectively turned into a slave, aren't they, in that case? So what happened in Britain, it was around the 1830s, there was a big uprising among the public consciousness against slavery, and they used Christianity, well, not really Christianity, they used Jesus to support their idea, their understanding that slavery was inhumane, that it was a crime against humanity, that African people were not animals, they were human beings like us, and we have no right as Christians, people who follow Jesus, we have no right to make these people slaves. It is against God's law to do that. And you're talking people from the very bottom of society up through the middle classes, right up to the highest echelons of the British intelligentsia. Byron, Darwin, Turner, name after name after name, spoke out very strongly on the issue of slavery, to the extent that slavery was abolished in Britain. It was, I think it was 1833 or in the 1850s. Finally, it was finally completely abolished in all the colonies as well. So it was a huge blow to the Luciferians who'd usurped Jesus through Rome, who, let's face it, Rome was brought to its knees by Christians. People who wouldn't have called themselves Christians, they're people who had embraced Jesus. Okay? They were followers of Jesus. They'd embraced Jesus. So if you look at the African faith of that time, which was very similar, almost identical to the Druid faith that governed most of Europe. So you have the Druid faith, the Voodoo faith, Voodoo African. I'm not talking about this black magic stuff, which was a nature faith, the same as Druidism was a nature-based faith. And they meet, both societies have been subjugated by Rome, by Roman soldiers. Both societies have fallen under the heel of the Roman boot. And then suddenly, they found Jesus as representative of a true human male, as enlightened by universal golden light intelligence, a male with a heart and compassion, a man who was so incensed by the Roman consciousness that had taken over, was occupying his own country, Israel, and had renamed it Palestine. A consciousness that had even infiltrated into the synagogues to the extent that Roman practices had been transported into the Judaic faith, and people were suddenly expected to buy special temple coins to give to the temple so that their prayers could be answered. That was a Roman tradition. Remember the coin that Jesus held in his hand and said, look, on this coin, one side, whose face is on it? Caesar. One half belongs to Caesar, the other half belongs to God. So Jesus was so angry because of the hypocrisy, because there's nothing that angers a caring, righteous person than absolute hypocrisy that is then being used to exploit the good people, the genuinely good, honest people. And that exploitation is damaging them. It is robbing their children. Because that's what usury does. It takes, and it takes more and more and more and more and more, as we know, as we're experiencing today. So Jesus, that kind, caring, compassionate man, was so enraged to witness these people who obviously didn't believe in God actually profiting off other people, off the people's faith in God. Because Jesus stood up for all humanity. The Son of Man. Not the Son of God, the Son of Man, who he called us his brother and sister. And taught us to pray to our Father, who explained to us that we are also eternal beings, we're eternal light beings. Well, we've got science, quantum energy now, to absolutely prove that for an absolute fact. The thoughts that are going around in my head right now are from quantum light energy at work in my brain, which is like a machine for the quantum energy to operate within. And when this body dies, that quantum energy, my spirit and my soul, the body light energy, will leave this body and probably be born again onto this planet, or maybe another planet, or maybe into another quantum dimension We just can't know for sure, except we have what Jesus told us. And people believed so strongly in what Jesus said that the people who'd been subjugated by Rome suddenly embraced Jesus. They didn't become Christians. The Voodoos incorporated Jesus into their voodoo faith. The Druids incorporated Jesus into their Druid faith. They accepted Jesus because Jesus was showing them, no, this is a true human being. Because those people had been subjugated by a very strange consciousness that had established itself in Italy, in Rome, in ancient Rome. It was a consciousness established by two brothers, Romulus and Remus, who were raised by wolves. And they established the order of a wolf pack onto Roman human society. And according to them, a man, a male human being, was somebody who had a heart of stone. He was brutal, he had no compassion and no conscience. And basically he did what he wanted. The bigger and more powerful he was, the more he could do what he wanted. And if he wasn't that physically powerful, as long as he had a lot of gold, then he could buy strong, powerful men to stand around him, to protect him. And then he could send those men out to go and steal for him and give them rights to do all kinds of things. And so you end up with this society where every woman and child is a slave, basically. The women have absolutely no rights whatsoever. They are just there purely for sex and for having babies. And children, well, it was actually against the law for a man to mourn the death of a child under the age of 3. Because a real man doesn't care about a child under the age of 3. If the child was 3, he was allowed to mourn 3 days. Okay? A day of mourning, alright then, 3 years. A day for each year. So that's the construct. That's the construct. Women have absolutely no rights. No, children have no rights. Men have all the rights. They're the powerful. They live by the Luciferian law of might equals right to do as thy will. And that is the whole of the law. Meanwhile, the voodoo Africans, okay, they were living in a society where men and women largely had equal rights. A lot of the voodoo priests were priestesses. A lot of the first warriors that fought on behalf, that stood up for their rights against Rome, that Rome tried to crush, they were women, warrior women. One of the first saints that the Roman Church established, one of the first people that they named a saint, was Delisena, a voodoo high priestess, West African voodoo high priestess, and a warrior who was martyred, murdered by the Romans, standing up for her rights to be a human being, to live as Jesus had told her she had a right to live, had confirmed, because that's what had happened to these people. Jesus had reconfirmed, had reconfirmed everything that Rome was telling them was wrong. Oh no, you're not civilised, you women have got rights, you care too much about your children, you men have got compassion, you men are all weak. You need to be ruthless and brutal, then you'll be civilised. Women, children, if you've got feelings for them, there's something wrong with you. You're a weak man if you've got compassion. And then suddenly Jesus, and the men always knew that they didn't like what was going on, because they love their children and they love their women. They don't like this brute that's been ruling them and taken over their lands, but they've had no power and nothing really to argue against it. After all, you know, look at all the superior technology the Romans seem to have. Which obviously, because they've been all around the world stealing of every single culture and putting all their efforts into war, into how to get more wealth for themselves. But Jesus shows to them that no, that's not a man. I'm the man. I'm the human. I represent the true human male, the Son of Man. I'm the real Son of Man. But obviously when Rome gets him, he becomes the Son of God. Immediately, no, sorry, you're just an ordinary man. This child, God's his dad, okay, but God isn't your dad. You're an ordinary man. You won't have compassion. So once you've divided the male and female from humanity, you've made a weak humanity, and that is exactly what was done to human communism, communal society, is that our natural attributes, that if we could say our propensity to capitalise, to profit from our work, coupled with our need and desire to socialise and live within the security of a community where everybody pitches in and looks after each other. That's quite a cohesive thing, isn't it? But if you can divide it and say, well, the social aspect is going to fall under this new ideology called communist, and capitalism is going to fall under this other new ideology of corporate capitalism. And actually, if you're a real socialist, and you really do stand against capitalism that's feeding off you, then, you know, Jesus, just chuck Jesus out. Okay? Jesus is the opiate of the masses. Jesus doesn't exist. Right? So, already he has succeeded in partly destroying Jesus from socialism. The very thing that Jesus himself represents is a socialist human being. The social human being. So you remove the human being and you end up with Soviet communism. State-controlled capitalism, basically. And you remove the human being out of capitalism because because they're still allowed to follow whatever religion, but it's always going to be an extremist, fake version of Jesus. So we've got the Jesus as presented by Cerinthus' Revelations, falsely presented as the work of St. John the Apostle, but we know that it's a plagiarism of original prophecies stuck together by Cerinthus, who was a Greek misogynist, a Greek Gnostic, totally misogynist guy, who obviously hated Jesus, and he replaces Jesus with Lucifer, as you can read very, very clearly in Revelations, where it says, I am the morning star, the bright and morning star. And we know that in the original Testament, the morning star is the name for Lucifer. And just before that, in that same passage, it talks about how Jesus is surrounded by 144,000 pure males, because who were all pure because they'd never defiled themselves with women. So the way that's interpreted is, well, that's okay then if they've had sex with children, because as long as they haven't defiled themselves with women. Does that really sound like Jesus? A man who supported women's rights to learn? So Marx did succeed, didn't he? Because we have the reality of it as was established in Russia. where they did succeed in removing the Tsar, taking over the Russian bank, controlling the Russian finance, establishing this Soviet communism, supposedly socialist. And then there's the other version of socialism as presented by the Nazis. But both were a fascist, extremist form of socialism, and neither of them followed Jesus, did they? Jesus just was just absent from both of those things. But in capitalism, oh well, Jesus is still sort of there in this church, apparently, that supports Jesus. You know, has everybody participating in a mock ritual human sacrifice and mock human cannibalism while kneeling before an instrument of Roman torture. That is the religion, isn't it? Well, could it really get any more Luciferian? It's like Luciferianism for children, isn't it? Dress it all up, put it in gold, have some little children singing nice hymns, you know, a man in a robe and lots of prayers and ceremonies. But at the end of the day, that is what is going on, isn't it? Ritual sacrifice, ritual human sacrifice, ritual cannibalism, while kneeling before an instrument of torture. It's Luciferianism. It's not what Jesus came for. It is not what the first Christians, the true followers of Jesus did. This is all Roman stuff. And it was all about, right from the start, taking control of what had brought Rome to its knees because people had refused to sell their souls anymore. No, you can't buy me with gold. I have a heart. I have faith in Jesus. Jesus has shown me the way to God. It's through my humanity that I will be with God. And if I veer from my humanity, then I'm damned. I'm damned. I can't find happiness in the next world. My children are going to suffer. So I have faith in Jesus. So no, you can't buy me with his gold. Suddenly, Lucifer's lost his power. His gold isn't working for him. Nobody believes in it anymore. Nobody believes in the golden light of his physical gold and the horrible, brutal, lawless man that it supports. People suddenly believe in the golden light of universal intelligence that shone through Jesus, a living human being, the Son of Man. Not the son of somebody who's claiming to be a god on earth, mightier than God. That basically he can live outside of the law. Nothing in this universe can survive outside of the law. And that's why if these people succeed, they will destroy even themselves. Ultimately it will be them who will be destroyed, because they're destroying their own souls and their own spirits. Because they're not letting any true golden light in. So, what hope is there for them? And that's why people like myself are taking time to wake people up. That's why A Plain Truth is making these videos, and other people, so many people are sharing such important information with people, because we care. Nothing more than we care. No matter what politics you are, no matter what faith, no matter what race, no matter how rich or poor, if you can be liberated from this Luciferian consciousness, because that is what they are now going to do, this, you know, pitching fights against each other. And as I say, Islam has embraced Jesus. Now Islam, they don't call themselves Christians, but they have embraced Jesus. Prophet Muhammad embraced Jesus. Because embracing Jesus isn't about a church and all this type of thing, is it? Embracing Jesus is about embracing your own humanity. And part of embracing our own humanity is to embrace our children and protect them. And that's why if we are going to succeed and develop and be born and survive our next stage of evolutionary development into becoming universal beings, into entering universal consciousness, then we are only going to do that by standing up for our children's rights. We're not going to do it through xenophobia or with bombs and bullets, just simply by standing up for our human rights and putting our faith in our humanity as Jesus, to trust in what Jesus said a true human male is, a compassionate, caring human being who cares for the sick, who doesn't exploit people's weaknesses, who doesn't judge people weak and then exploit them, who doesn't give himself the power to exploit anybody that he considers weaker than himself. The total opposite of the Roman construct of male, that's Jesus. It brought Rome to its knees. Jesus brought Rome to its knees. A humanity united on side of Jesus, their true humanity, brought Rome, the Roman construct, to its knees, to the extent it was forced to usurp Jesus and turn him into the Son of God, and claim that God had then sacrificed him so that they could all be forgiven of their sins, and now they're going to fulfil God's revelations. Horrible, evil revelations written by Cerinthus, twisted out of the original testaments, where most of the earth is going to be destroyed. Okay? And everybody's just going to accept it, because we're fulfilling the prophecies. But you see, the people of Nineveh weren't that stupid, were they? Jonah, when he gave the prophecy, as I've said before, the people immediately said, oh no, we don't want any of that to happen, we're going to change, we're going to live lawfully, please forgive us. And so they did, and they were forgiven, and the prophecy didn't happen. And that is the whole point, is that we're not supposed to fulfil these terrible prophecies. They're a warning about what happens when you live outside the law. There's no escape from the reality. It's not a punishment, it's just what happens. Like when you walk off the edge of a cliff and you fall, it's not a punishment, it's the fact that you've ignored the laws of gravity. And what happens to people who live lawlessly? Well, they do end up becoming extinct. That is when these people, if they do ever manage to fulfil their evil plans, their agendas, to depopulate the earth and in the process destroy most of the life on earth, and to go and live in their little plot with their technology, they will quickly realise that, oh no, it isn't working out. Because, as Jesus explained, to those who have less, even that which they have shall be taken away. And to those who have more, more shall be given. So the law of abundance, abundance in compassion, abundance breeds abundance, delivers abundance. Okay? And all these Luciferians, they are doomed. They are doomed. So, you know, by standing up for our children's rights, we are actually helping these people. But I mean, they're too mad to accept that we would be helping them. Because no, we're hindering them. Because they don't want to live under universal law. They want to be free to be a criminal. They think if they're a big strong man, or if they've got enough gold, they should be allowed to do what they like. The whole of the law is my equals right to do as thy will. But the whole of Jar law, universal law, is right equals might, to do as thy will. Are you right? Are you lawful? Then your will is good. If it's supported by universal law, your will is good. But as I say, this is what they want. They want us to fight, divide, until the multitude, disillusioned with Christianity, whose deistic spirits from that moment will be without compass or direction, anxious for an ideal, but without knowing where to render its adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out into public view. This manifestation will result from the general reactionary movement which will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time. Okay? Because Jesus isn't bothered if you believe in a particular religious faith or not. You don't have to be a religious person to be a humane, compassionate, caring, lawful person. But you see, these people, no, you're not allowed not to believe in anyone. You're going to have to bow down to Lucifer. Everybody is going to have to bow down to Lucifer. So basically what they're suggesting is that they're going to, because Lucifer, that brought finally out into public view, because when was the last time Lucifer was in full public view was before Rome got crushed by people empowered by Jesus. So they basically want to bring Caesar back from ancient Rome and rethrone him, reinstate his consciousness into the 21st century with 21st century technology. That is what they're talking about. You're talking about the kind of society, as I say, that was based on the wolf pack. Still is. The echoes of it are still around. People are still living by these Roman gender constructs. Psychological slavery. So they want to bring him back, you know, a consciousness, like I say, where the rich were all drinking lead-sweetened wine and having mercury for medicine, and all the common people were drinking out of lead piping. Mad people, basically. They want to enthrone that, empower that lived by this law, this Luciferian law of might equals right, to do as thy will. Rapists' law. Because there's no room for women's rights under that law, is there? There's no room for children's rights. Slavery is permitted. Slavery is acceptable. Every crime is acceptable as long as you're powerful. As long as you're more powerful than the people that you are oppressing and committing crimes against. They're not crimes. That's your right. So it's really serious. And that is why people are being crippled by this divide between capitalism and socialism. We need both. They both need to work together, and they both can work together under the beneficence of universal law, with compassion as the head cornerstone of that. Which now, presently, compassion's been kicked out and left for a stumbling block, hasn't it? Anybody with compassion and care in this world, well, you're not going to get very far to the top. You're never going to become a top Wall Street banker. You're probably not likely to end up at the White House if you've got any true cares and compassion. But no, compassion is the head cornerstone. The stone that the builders refused is the head cornerstone. Compassion. That a man cares, that a child isn't judged a minor, lesser important human being, that women have equal rights, that they're not denigrated. that male and female respect each other as equal sides of man in societies that are both profitable and sustainable and sociable. And who benefit from the unconditional love that universal law provides, and the ethos, the social ethos of unconditional positive regard, where we connect with people's humanity before we connect with the colour of the skin or their faith or what culture they're from. We see another human being. So anyway, you know, this is what I just wanted to share this, and like I say, this does ring so true because of what I understood about Marxism and how he was used to exterminate the human consciousness that had abolished slavery, that was so powerful. It had abolished slavery, and previously it had brought Rome to its knees, and they developed that whole philosophy specifically to exterminate Jesus from socialism and turn it into a political ideology. That was against capitalism as a political ideology. When it is like setting our right hand at war with our left hand, how on earth can we ever succeed except the people who have just used that as a mechanism to control us, have used that divide so that we're distracted while they get on doing with whatever they want to do, and we've seen what they're doing. It's just absolute evil, and they do want to fulfil those revelations. Those revelations are their right to fulfil. Look, we're fulfilling the revelations. No, only a stupid consciousness. The people of Nineveh weren't that stupid, but the people of today obviously are. So it is up to us now, it really is, because we are the last living line of defence between what is going to happen to the children of today, how their future is going to pan out. We are the last living line of defence. So either we are going to step up now with our faith in our humanity, okay, whether you believe in Jesus or not, surely you understand the beneficence of universal law of abundance and compassion. If you can connect with your human rights and a child's rights and a woman's rights and an animal's rights and even a plant's rights, if you can connect with those, well, that is, you know, basically you're connected to the human being within yourself as represented by Jesus, the true Son of Man. And then you can step out of the construct, the gender constructs that you've been moulded into as a male or a female. And you can become a human being first. And as I say, the only way to stop this now, their plan for this Third World War, that, you know, they will finally get to implement their Agenda 21. They've got that going along with it as well. You know, there's all kinds of factions supporting this horror that's going on in the world right now. The only way, because you can't fight them, you can't stop them, we can't physically stop them, but what we can do is we can start ourselves. We can stand up and demand our children's rights. That's the key, as Isaiah explains. You hold the hand of the little child. If you can give your children rights, then all other rights will follow. But first you need to protect the children. You need to assure their future. We need to stand up for their rights and refuse to allow them to be burdened with this criminal debt that is about to be dumped on their shoulders, and that will be used to justify everything that this evil Luciferian consciousness can do. Because, you know, what is Lucifer except a criminal? That is what Lucifer is, a criminal. And the only thing that can inhibit a criminal and inhibit the spread of crime and social dis-ease is the law. That's it. So you stand by universal law, and first and foremost, universal law supports the rights of the child first. The least in the Luciferian view of life is the most important in universal golden light intelligence. The children, they're our VIPs. We need to support them. We need to stand up for their rights, to get this planet cleaned up, for them to have a future worth living, and not to be under the control of these criminals that have throughout time, we've witnessed it, how they've conspired to work against us on every level, levels that people couldn't even imagine, that yes, they are capable of employing a Karl Marx specifically to divide humanity, the human consciousness. They've already divided the male and female. Now they need to divide our very social structure of, you know, both capitalism and socialism that we live, that we profit from our work, and that we socialise. And that we live by a fair and just law. But no, they have to divide it, don't they? Like I say, having the left hand fighting the right hand, it's totally ridiculous. It's totally ridiculous. And, you know, I think it's proved by the very fact that the first thing Marx does is remove Jesus out of socialism. He doesn't move Jesus out of capitalism, because capitalism is allowed to have Jesus, because Jesus is just a fantasy that they make money out of, so they're allowed to make money out of everything and anything. That's why they're evil. But socialists, the social aspect, well, we don't need Jesus. Jesus doesn't exist. Do you see what I mean? And that's exactly, and here it is. It's spoken out in absolute clearly, isn't it, by Pike, where he's saying, this will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time. Everybody will receive the true light of the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out into public view, because for 2,000 years, apparently, it's had to hide behind its facades, hasn't it? Oh, they don't understand. Yes, of course the Pope can have little boys walking around for him to bugger regularly, because, you know, he's allowed to do that. It's, as long as he doesn't have sex with a woman, he'll be fine. But, you know, the peasants don't really understand. They've still got these childish attachments, haven't they? You know, they're weak. They've still got compassion for their children. They're not superior like us to be able to live without compassion, without a heart, without a conscience. Do we have a heart? Do we have a conscience? Are we compassionate? Are we lawful? Do we care about the child or not? That is the question that people need to ask. Whether you're a Muslim, Christian, Jew, Hindu, Buddhist, whatever, or non, even if you're an atheist, do you care about the child? Do you care about the future? Are you prepared to accept the facts of your own quantum energy, your own quantum reality? So anyway, you know, thank you for taking time to listen, and I've took time to share this. I've took time to go through this, because it is so important, and it's important that people understand life, reality in its true context, and that's what I'm trying to show, is a fair and accurate perspective, because there are many interpretations of the truth. There's lots of truths out there, but how do we understand that truth? Do we receive that truth in a fair and balanced way? Do we act on it lawfully? You know, somebody's stolen off us, so that's the truth. So now we've gone and chopped their heads off. Does the law justify that? Why did somebody steal off you? Oh, they were starving. So, they were starving. Why was that person starving? I don't know. So, why did you think you had a right to go and chop their heads off for stealing off you when they're starving? They've got a lawful right to eat. Why weren't you standing up for their right to eat? You see? Within a compassionate, lawful consciousness, the truth is always interpreted kindly, mercifully, with compassion. So you don't get the kind of truths where you look at a black person and say, oh, you're inferior, I've got a right to make you my slave. Or you look at a woman and say, oh, you've got no rights, I'm bigger and stronger than you, I'm going to rape you. Or you look at a child and say, actually, I think I'll just kill this child. It's only a lesser human being anyway, and I've got the power to do it, so I can just do it. It actually gives me pleasure. You know, this is what we're dealing with. This is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with, you know, and a plain truth that exposes it as well. We're dealing with people that are murdering children on a massive scale, like never before. And we've got to start. We cannot ignore it, and we need to stand up. Please stand up for your children's rights. Please, 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 please. End the divisions. Step out of them. Liberate yourself. Liberate yourself from the mental slavery. Please. Everybody, from all walks of life, every phase, no matter what your politics are, you know. I made a video recently about Trump, because I'm sick to death of these people going on about Pizzagate, but when it comes to all the wealth of evidence that supports lawful suspicion about Trump being not just a sex offender but also a child sex offender as well. You know, he's committed sexual offences against children, rape of children. Apparently, these are the allegations. Lawful suspicion, but no, that's fake news. This is stupidity. That is ignorance. That if people can pick up on a few words in leaked emails, but they can ignore sworn on affidavit statements by witnesses. They can ignore the fact that he won't release his tax returns because they will expose his out-of-court settlements that he's had to pay to children that he's abused. And the 19 women that are stood before us saying that he's sexually assaulted them, and his own confession. No, that's all fake news. No. What I'm showing here isn't fake news. What A Plain Truth is sharing here in this video is not fake news. Understand your history. If you can understand your history, you can understand your present, and you can understand how not to repeat the pitfalls of history in your future. That's what's the whole point of understanding your history. What you've done, where you've gone wrong, where you've gone right. What's gone wrong, what's gone right here. Right, bang, yeah. We know that Jesus was right. That's why Rome failed, because they cannot. Right is might. That's the true might. Right is might, and all we need to do is be right. We don't need to fight them. We don't need to attack them. We just need to be right. That's our power, that's our strength. That was the strength of Jesus, was in his righteousness. As a true human male, as a true human being, as a true man, not this Roman wolf construct. What can I say? Send love to everybody and wish everybody all the best for 2018. I hope that the world wakes up and we brighten up, because I tell you, you know, the truth actually is beautiful. The universal truth. It's the truth of this world that's ugly. Face up to it, face the reality of it, get with the beautiful truth and start making life beautiful.